Hello and welcome to A Day in the Life. I'm your host, Darren Bloomfield. Joining me today is Neil from Safeco Insurance. Welcome, Neil.
Hey, Darren, good to be here. Really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, no, definitely. Really looking forward to this conversation. Happy we got connected. So can you give an overview of Safeco, Liberty Mutual, and your time there so far, how you got started, and just kind of an overview of your career path so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for, again, having me on. And so currently I'm the senior territory manager, one of a couple here in Colorado for Safeco Insurance. It's the independent agency brand of Liberty Mutual Insurance. Been in this role for, if I'm doing my math right, about 4 years, but I've been in distribution working with independent agents for upwards of 8 years. And I started with Liberty Mutual in 2012. I was part of a development program where I rotated through 4 key roles: claims, underwriting, property, and product state management. And so that was a great base learning opportunity to get into distribution. And so I've basically been with Liberty Mutual my entire career, and it's been a lot of fun working with small business owners and helping agencies thrive in the marketplace. I focus on personal lines, and so a lot of my expertise is in the auto, home, specialty, landlord market. And I bet we'll talk a little bit more about things outside of work. And so I'm excited to tell you everything about Neil.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So can we go back to what you're saying about the rotational programs? I think that's definitely something that's great. At Insurance has, I'm sure some other areas outside of insurance do as well. Just being able to graduate college and being able to try, multiple different areas of anything before you get locked in and kind of commit to it, and having that kind of built in with other people, your age or similar experience level. Fortunate enough for me, I was able to have, enough internships throughout college and insurance where I narrowed down, the broadness of that our industry has to offer. But can you kind of talk, about that, how it kind of helped you test out, little, I think you said 4 different areas. So that kind of impact your decision for what you did after that, or how were you able to kind of choose the next step after that rotation?
Yeah, any company that has a rotation program is awesome. So if there's anyone in school right now or considering a career move, rotation programs are absolutely perfect, because as you mentioned, you get to sample or test each role to see where you're the best fit. And if I were to really rank those rotations where I was great and where I was bad, it's really clear. I am someone who, I want to develop my own schedule. I want clear goals that are aspirational. And so I didn't actually do that well in the underwriting rotation, because it was a very narrow decision box. It was basically, you're judged on how well you made pretty well prescribed decisions. And my personality just didn't fit in that role. I just didn't. But there are folks listening to this, folks who are in the underwriting department, where that's their perfect situation. What I liked about distribution is I was working with one of the end users, our independent agents. And so there was almost like a ground game that I could really appreciate, because I was working with the folks who are actually using our product. It also, I think it allowed me to actually use skill sets from all 4 of my rotations. I could talk about our product in a unique sense. I know exactly how it was rated. I knew how underwriters made decisions. I knew how our claims practices were versus our contract, and essentially how that process worked. And I think not only was I able to, but I think that gets a level of respect with independent agents, is having a territory manager or having a sales rep or marketing manager in their office who really can add value to them and can have a really good conversation, not just showing up to discuss numbers or to drop off donuts, but can really make and remove barriers for their partnership with the company.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, of just kind of that ground game. I've heard the term hand-to-hand combat kind of as well, of just kind of being, on like the front lines, kind of doing like the, maybe smaller deals, but that's really like the day-to-day work, besides just doing kind of like the overarching, like future forecasting kind of planning with
Yeah.
that. And I think also of what you're saying of being able to meet, with these agents, kind of like these small business owners, you can really see where you like your time and kind of your investment is going, of seeing like the growth. And I think
Mm.
that's pretty fulfilling for you, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because especially if you're a distribution professional for multiple years, you get to see agents go from zero to millions of dollars with your company and earn awards and trips and profit sharing, and it's a ton of fun. Those are the best kind of meetings. It's also going into the harder part of the role is sometimes you have difficult conversations, yet it's not a difficult conversation and then you're done, right? It's a partnership. We sometimes need to go in an office, lightly press or even stomp on toes, deliver a bad message, but then leave with a hug, because we need to write business and we need to partner together the next month and the next year from there. So it really is, it's not necessarily the relationship and a transactional, it's a fusion of those two into a partnership where we wouldn't exist without independent agents, and independent agents are successful because they're really good carrier partners.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a long-term outlook on that. And I think sometimes, I mean, I'm in underwriting right now, sometimes it just seems kind of like a, transaction account to account, or, oh, this effective date or that effective date. And but then like once you start doing business with the same person, many times, like
Mhm.
there's probably a reason they're coming to me or my company, is because they like the relationship, because at a certain point the products from a carrier are pretty similar, pricing or terms or commission, something like that. So I think, people go or, use who they want to work with when they kind of
Absolutely.
have the choice.
Absolutely.
So what's kind of like that process of like onboarding a new agency, or what's kind of your growth or kind of goals like with them, from when you first find them to down the road?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I'll break it. Hopefully I can remember all three of my bullet points here. And it's essentially, it depends from market to market. So here in Colorado, one specific carrier might do really well close ratio wise versus another carrier. So, and they might have a different distribution strategy just because we're very catastrophe prone with the hail that falls from the sky. So, Safeco, we are pretty well penetrated. There aren't a ton of extra non-appointed agents with Safeco. That being said, Colorado and the Denver market is different than Nebraska and Texas and California, name the state, right? So it's up to kind of a collaboration between product and the desire to penetrate in a certain area. So, and that drives kind of my next few points is, when I reach out to a new agency, I am first interested in their business plan. And that is, I think, way more important than describing our products. And I certainly would describe our products, but because I represent a carrier and I can't help them build their business to the point that they could help build their business. So the last thing I want is to work with a new agency, a startup agency, and 90 days down the road, 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road, their quote flow, their lead flow is just not enough to maintain any carrier appointments, because then we have to have a tough conversation. And so whenever I talk to an agency, I want to know, what their process is for personal lines lead flow. Is it cross-selling from commercial? Is it partnering with lenders, mortgage professionals, real estate professionals, financial planners? Is it organic search? Is it paid social? Is it organic social? So I want to know where their lead flow is and how mature that is. I also want to know the people in the agency, if they have mature producers, or is it just one person, is a one-person shop? And that really helps determine, is this agency scalable?
Yeah.
So the third thing would be, we partner with a ton of aggregators, networks, business development companies, clusters. There's a lot of different ways you can describe them. And they are a fantastic partnership because they'll help serve that gap that I mentioned earlier, where I can't really help them build their business as much as an insurance agent or another person who has walked in their shoes can, or hold them accountable to their entire business. So sometimes I'll refer producers or agencies that just aren't a right fit for a direct deployment to our network partners, because they can actually help guide them along the way. I've had a lot of fun prospecting for new agents. Sometimes it's as simple as just me picking up the phone and cold calling them, which is actually a lot of fun. Sometimes I've prospected them through LinkedIn, which is a ton of fun as well. I'll be scrolling through and I'll see a job opening for an account manager at an agency, and then I'll realize, wait a second, I don't recognize that name. And so it's a startup agency. So then I call them up and I learn their story, and I'm willing to take a chance on them. So there's a lot of unique ways we'll prospect for agencies, as well as inbound requests. It really is like the most fun of the job, is just being that almost an investor, if you will, in an agency, where you're seeing if this is the right fit for an investment, like whether time and energy in helping them grow with our carrier brand.
Yeah. And back to what you were saying earlier, of kind of understanding like the process or kind of the lead generation flow of the agency. I think kind of in your position too, you're working with like 50, 100 plus like agencies. You can kind of see, like the tips of the trade kind of tools that if this agency isn't using, you could give them advice or kind of your value add or different perspective than them, is you said, kind of being in like the trenches. So you could kind of see what they're not doing. And maybe they could, implement this or that to be more successful or more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the tools of their trade for Safeco, as well as I think it's just great business practice, is just approaching independent agents and how I can help their business thrive. And that could mean totally different things for each agency. One, I have to know exactly who that agency is, how they act, what their lead flow is, who they are in the marketplace. But I also want to share best practices with them. And from that, meaning Safeco's, our slice of the pie will grow. And so it's really just, I want to make sure we have a conversation about the total pie first, because that's how our slice is determined.
Today's episode is sponsored by Talage. For someone who has sold insurance, nothing is more tedious than quoting small commercial policies. And frankly, for many agents, selling small commercial policies is difficult and unprofitable. But then we found Talage, sponsor of the Insurance Nerds podcast. They are an API-based digital distribution platform that's changing commercial insurance. With Talage, you can quote multiple top-rated carriers in less than 10 minutes and get instant quotes. Talage makes commercial insurance quoting the easiest part of the job. If you want to make commercial quoting the easiest part of your day, then check out talageins.com/insnerds for more info. That's talageins.com/insnerds for easy commercial quoting. And if you sign up using talageins.com/insnerds, they'll waive the setup fee. Tell them Tony sent you. Now, back to our show.
So in kind of like the personal line space, I mean, auto, home, motorcycles, any of those other toys or gadgets that people might have, what do you kind of see, in real estate, or like kind of trends and kind of like the economy kind of impacting like their lead flow in that?
Yeah, there's a lot of unique trends going on in the personal lines marketplace. So the first comes to mind is inflation. I think today as recording, like the May data came out, this consumer price index went up. I think it's 8.6% versus the prior year. So, and that's really trickling down to repair costs, both auto for cycle times, just getting the parts in place, labor costs, as well as the property side, so materials, labor. And so I think that is a huge headwind for CSRs and producers who are having those kind of conversations. Those are difficult ones. Sometimes it is, we have to move your policy to another carrier. That's the value of an independent agent. There's choice. But sometimes there's even more difficult conversations where the producer is saying, or the CSR is saying, we've ran your policy, and actually this carrier is actually like still competitive, even though their rate went up more than what you're comfortable with. So that, I think inflation, it's going to create some difficult conversations, but I think there's a lot of data that producers and CSRs have to help get the point across. And I think consumers are seeing it everywhere in food prices and gas prices. And so it's something that they can easily swallow versus prior years where inflation hasn't been in front of them as much as it has been on the back end side. I would say the residential real estate market there's a lot of things that could happen. I wish I had a crystal ball. The one thing I do know is that loan transactions are moving around quite a bit. There's some data that came out yesterday that last week, I think it was the first week of June, refinance transactions were down 75% versus the same week prior year. And that's huge. That's huge because there's quite a few personal lines agents who have partnered with loan officers and mortgage brokers and realtors to basically help with that transaction, provide a good insurance price to make sure they can close that loan on time, and fantastic marketing strategy to provide that kind of support and advice. But I would just caution producers who are getting discouraged, because I don't think just because loan transactions, whether new purchase or refinances, are going down, doesn't mean it's shrinking the total amount of personalized insurance out there. And so it's really just a call to action for those producers is, hey, like lead flow changes. Early 2000s, it was all about buying leads. And, in the 80s, maybe it was about walk-ins. Late 90s, it was about calling the white pages. And so I think the flavor of lead flow changes every couple of years. And so maybe it's the next version of lead flow is important for these producers to get the best they can do and help their community and get the quality leads they want.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too, of like the leads just might look different, now with the trends in the housing market, but the opportunity is kind of like shifting. Like now, if people aren't, refinancing, they're kind of locked into that lower mortgage. Why would they want to refinance into like a higher mortgage? But then also from like the insurance point of view, right? If houses are like appreciating so much as they are kind of currently in the last several months, then couldn't they be like underinsured to a certain point? If their selling price is now like way higher, like couldn't that be like an opportunity for like an agent to kind of come in and, I don't know, reappraise the house or kind of like reevaluate how much insurance they should be carrying?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's another unique trend I've been working with agencies on the last 2 quarters, especially the Marshall Fire here in Colorado, just a devastating wildfire that happened literally the beginning of the year. And it's really helped solidify an independent agent, because they'll be able to have that conversation about replacement cost versus market value, and really understanding the difference between the two, whether one is higher than the other. And frankly, I've looked at a lot of agencies' books of business, and I've seen their policies in force stay pretty flat, but their premium is actually going up. And a lot of that is not due to extra new business. It's just transactions where they've increased dwelling amounts, coverage A amounts. And I think that if you were to interview those agents, those are the conversations where that makes their career. In fact, like they love those, is having a high quality conversation. Am I covered enough? And that I think is just the value of an independent agent, being able to assess like which carrier is the right fit, who's going to get the right replacement cost for their home, and to help dispel the differences between market value and replacement cost.
Yeah, yeah. And how is kind of this like insurance background that you've had, kind of the skills that you developed, and just the perspective of looking at and evaluating risk? How has that benefited you in your own real estate investing journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I love commercial real estate. Most of my focus right now is the multifamily space as an investor. So, and if I were to take a step back, the 401k is awesome. I'm not anti 401k. I still invest in it, but it's limiting. You can't really take your money out for a very long time. It also is tax deferred. It's not as tax efficient as some other things like real estate. And so real estate can give you real-time income, passive income, as well as it has some unique tax efficiencies like depreciation and deductions that no one really knows about, because 401ks or IRAs traditionally don't have access to invest in those kind of deals. And so what I like about real estate, and I think it's well paralleled with insurance, is that real estate offers three things it draws to me. So one, there's that hands-on creativity, hands-on, like that nitty-gritty of real estate. So hanging drywall, painting, designing a room, knowing the construction side, getting your hands dirty. So that's, I think, something I appreciate. And whether it's my own house and DOI or just the skills I get underwriting policies and helping agents insure homes properly. I think the second thing is, when I think back to my undergraduate degree, it's in economics, and I don't think I get enough economics exposure in my current role. Like, I know the insurance economics, but doesn't always, I want to think a little bit more broadly. And so real estate allows me to think in a micro scale. What is this market? What does population look like? What does rent growth look like? What does income look like? But also the macro sense. What do short-term interest rates look like? What do cap rates look like for exit plans on commercial deals? And so there's that nerdy math sense that I just don't get every single day, that I love doing in the mornings and evenings. My final thing is, I think I'm a networker at heart. I'm in distribution and sales. And so just knowing the right people is critical with real estate, knowing the right folks for the right private placements, knowing the right brokers for deals, for lead flow, and just knowing the right vendors, having a good contractor, insurance agent. And so I think all three of those things, having that nitty gritty DIY real estate construction side, the macroeconomics, and then the the ability to network and just leverage the amount of folks and the quality of folks, is all three of those things really help drive my real estate interests as a hobby.
Yeah, no, definitely. So how do you kind of separate, or I guess, more likely balance or intertwine kind of the day job of your insurance career, but then also kind of your passion project or hobbies of real estate?
Yeah, so I think practically whenever I wake up in the morning, I am full real estate. Other than my morning routine, like playing the piano and working out and stuff, I'm full real estate until my core hours start. So there is a little bit of time separation. I also think that indirectly there's skills that are helping me in my insurance career. So as I mentioned earlier, most of my role has been in personal lines, and there's a ton of opportunity in the commercial lines side. And so I think the more networking, the more exposure I have on the commercial real estate side, the more perspective I gain in future roles that ask me to learn more about commercial insurance. And so then when, let's say, my core hours ends or it's the weekend, then my hobbies start again. So I'm having calls with passive investors, or I'm going to a market to tour deals, or I'm analyzing deals. So it's a lot of fun. I do bring, like, on my social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, I do bring everything to the play. So real estate, insurance, 2000s music, if you're an Akon fan, or if you're a Dashboard Confessional fan, let's make sure we connect. So it is a lot of fun. And so to answer your question, I do have some clear time boundaries, but also I think there's some skill sets that bleed over that really make me even more of a commodity in the insurance talent space.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, just millennials as you're kind of walking around. So, kind of with what you're doing and real estate investing, are you investing with like anyone that you know work with in insurance, or are you kind of utilizing like your network of agents to help with kind of getting insurance on the properties that you're using?
Yeah, so my target market is Kansas City, Missouri, and I've actually used one of my colleagues to help introduce me to a really good, habitational risk insurance agent in that area because I really wanted someone with boots on the ground in that area. So that I think that just comes back to networking. It's anyone and everyone could help introduce you to or add value to whatever you want in your career, or in your hobbies. And what's interesting is when I talked about real estate investing with friends and family and colleagues, like a lot of things ring true where, for example, my brother just had twins. I don't think he has time to vet real estate deals, to put in offers, to secure funding, to get insurance, to raise money. List goes on. And so that's exactly the avatar for a passive investor, is like for people that he trusts. Hopefully my brother trusts me, is to have money set aside to invest passively in the right kind of commercial real estate deal. And I think that story resonates with anyone in my network.
Yeah, definitely. And to switch gears a little bit, going back to your first few years at Safeco and kind of the progression through that. So I'm kind of noticing, in my own career, like 5-6 months into full time now, like you don't really know what you don't know. So kind of in that like entry level role when you came in and just kind of like working with like your managers at the time and then yourself now kind of being the manager of the people whose role that you used to like do or something similar like that. How has that kind of like helped your progression? But then also like when you were in that entry level role, like what did you think that the progression would be versus like what you're kind of like doing now?
Yeah, so I would say I'll break down your question in a couple different ways. So whenever you're in a frontline role or entry level or just a couple of years of experiences, of course, do your job really well. There was a time, I mentioned it earlier, in my underwriting rotation where I just wasn't doing that good of a job. Like I just wasn't thriving, and I had a mentor ask me, or basically tell me like, hey, number one, beyond special projects would be do your role really, really well, be an expert in your role. That is 99% of any promotion, is like, can you do your role really well? And then after you get that, you can execute your role really well. And then you start thinking about special projects, raising your hand more often, telling your manager about the role you want, and helping and having your manager help craft a plan to get there, a development plan. And so usually that's best in a special project, whether it's collaborating other departments or just research that isn't done and ideas you really want to execute. I think as I aspire to more leadership roles, I think there's a balance between really inspirational, aspirational leaders and operational leaders. And I just hope to be that perfect balance, someone who's been able to do a lot of different roles, exceeded the roles really well, who has done that job before, but also knows that everyone is motivated differently, and to really get to know that person's story to help them thrive in their career. And I think that's like the best description of an aspirational leader, is helping folks thrive in their career and making sure that they are doing a great job and feel supported in their role.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge emphasis in insurance on outside of like the textbook learning or kind of the experiential learning. I think that's very like valuable, of just being like immersed in kind of, account by account, or like, this is why we did what we did, kind of like the more the business side that you
Yeah.
really can't learn in school. But then what are some of like the conversations that you had, kind of like anticipating how your role would like progress, or what you would actually be like doing, besides like, oh, you're promoted, like what is actually like changing in your day-to-day work, or like the autonomy that you have?
Yeah, I would just go back to crafting special projects that the outcome, or at least the process in that project, is a skill that your next role would want. So, for example, if you're going into a leadership role or region director role, are there ways you can help craft a strategy about a product or a distribution initiative that in that process you are illustrating a skill that you would be doing anyway as a region director? Um, a lot of times, myself included, will complain about like, hey, we're not competitive in this product in this area of the state or in this segment. But I don't think that's what a good region director or manager or leader does. Is they say, why are we not? How can we? And trying to see between those lines and put together a story. So those are a lot of the special projects I've been working on, is just thinking in the process of the project, or the end result, or the folks I would bring on to the team for that project, who can help open extra doors, is like, what project can I do that illustrates a skill set that I'll need down the road?
Yeah, no, definitely that makes sense. Just having that kind of long-term outlook on your career, and not just like kind of like a job kind of outlook.
Yeah.
Is there anything, as we wrap up here, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to touch on?
Well, I mentioned earlier, it was partially a joke, but I am huge into like mid and early 2000s music, whether it's alternative or emo when it wasn't emo. And I think that is, we're getting to a point, not only are millennials the largest insurance buying generation, as well as like home buying generation, and I think they are slowly becoming one of the largest generations at work. And so I use that as almost like a grasp on LinkedIn of, just posting about songs you never thought about for the last 15 years. Is, millennials like play a huge pivotal role at work. And so it's critical to like understand how to manage them, how to help them thrive, how to keep them engaged at work. And I just love the work that we do at Safeco and Liberty Mutual. We have a website, Agent for the Future, and a lot of thought leadership on engaging millennials, attracting millennials as leads, but also engaging millennials on your team if you're a carrier or if you're an agency. And so it's just something fun that I like to talk about, 2000s music online. And I think it's just an important skill set for executives and leaders to think about nowadays.
Yeah, well, managing millennials and insurance. Shout out to Insuring Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Gen Z book to come.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Neil. I appreciate your time. Thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And thanks for the invitation.